Mike McCool here in the Royal Examiner studio, and with me today is Robin Cooke. Robin is running for the Board of Supervisors in Frederick County in the Opequon District.
Correct.
Good. So, Robin, like I ask all the candidates right up front, is why do you want to do this?
Well, Frederick County is the fastest growing county in the state. With this growth, I see problems. I moved here 6 years ago from Charlotte, North Carolina. Same thing happening. The county was developing. They were not putting in the necessary roads. They were not putting money into the schools.
Yep.
They were concentrating on building, and that was it.
Right.
And so really started worrying about our lack of infrastructure in this district.
Charlotte's a good example because if anyone's ever been to Charlotte, North Carolina, say 20 years ago, and you go there now, you will not recognize it.
That is true. Very much so.
And cities have relied on the interstate system for their local travel, and that doesn't work. It doesn't work. So, and you know, Winchester is getting that way. We have a lot of roads around there. We got our Route 37, which they've tried to complete for how many decades, I think. But you're right. Frederick County is seeing tremendous growth.
And you know, we're also seeing it with I-81. And that's what happened in Charlotte was 77 couldn't compete and couldn't keep up. And so we're now starting to have the problems. And especially in this Opequon District, which is Stevens City and Lake Frederick. Lake Frederick will have 2,200 homes in it when it's finished. Stevens City has a huge D.R. Horton development going up right now, which will have 690 homes.
Yes.
All of those homes are going to be feeding into Route 11, 277, which is Frederick Pike, and I-81.
Right.
And we need to do something. We need to either control the growth, slow it down until our roads are up to standards, or we just need to fix it. And that's why I'm running.
Well, it takes a little vision to fix it, I think.
Yes.
And you've recognized the problem, so I think that's a good thing. But you're right, though. That whole district up there is growing like crazy. You know, we've done some mailings for different people, and some of our clients, you know, market their services in that area. And I can remember when we had 199 homes, so we couldn't mail its way at Frederick County, at Lake Frederick, and in just a matter of a couple of years, we're at 1,200 now, I think, on those addresses in the two districts up there. So it's tremendous, fast growth, and we don't see it because it's kind of hidden. And the same way, like you mentioned, Stevens City, there's just a lot of homes. And of course, that goes back to schools, which will be a county issue. School problems, transportation. Frederick County's going to have a lot of problems.
Yes.
If they're not attacked, you know.
Our schools, Sharando is overcrowded. Their trailers have been moved in. The problem is they can't expand the school right now because the trailers are sitting on the land that would be used. And the other question is, what do you do with the students when you're trying to remodel and expand?
Yeah.
So schools are a big issue. And unfortunately, we fell behind with COVID, and things did not get done. And we are now playing catch up. We need to work, the Board of Supervisors needs to work in conjunction with the school board to make sure that funds given to the school board are used appropriately and that money is put into the school not only for the facilities but also for our students. Every student deserves a good education, and our students have fallen behind, and we need to play catch up with them.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody just the other day that teaches in the university level, and they said students are coming in there now from high school, and it's very disappointing in how much remedial time that they have to turn over to the class and completely changing the curriculum almost, he said, in the classes I teach because they're not ready. They're not ready for it.
That is true. Before I retired, I was a university professor. I helped start a pharmacy school in North Carolina, and teaching pharmacy math. My students could not do simple math.
Right.
They were coming out of high school without the necessary skills.
Yeah.
And so we can see where our schools have fallen behind.
Right, and it's going to take a lot of work to get that moving again. So one of the things that you mentioned a lot, and you're passionate about all these things, but is there a particular thing that you like, this is on my radar, and this is where I'm going to push when elected?
Well, my first reason for running is with the growth in Lake Frederick, Our fire and emergency was responding from downtown Stevens City. It took them 15 to 20 minutes to get there.
Right.
And that was being able to get across the bridge and all the traffic. My opponent decided finally, after being in office for 10 years, that it was time to push for the fire station, which has been a number one priority since 2006.
Right.
But no one acted on it.
That's been a long time.
I know, and it's much needed. Our medic is very overworked in the Stevens City because of their response, the number of responses they're making to the Lake Frederick community, which is a retirement community.
Right.
The fire station has finally gotten approved. We're still waiting to hear if they bought the land and where it's going to be. That's a number one priority, to get that started and get that built.
You know, you mentioned some of these things about the county, but when you have a lot of towns that have a say in what goes on, and you know, it's one thing when you just got a county and there's no towns out there, but in your particular area, there's a lot of little towns. I mean, that are strung up the Route 11 there and stuck around, and they're all over the place, and that just adds one more kink in the armor, I think.
Right, it does.
One more level, one more layer that you got to chop down to get around it. There's a lot of good candidates running up in Frederick County. I know several of them, those running up there, and they're all, you know, I think like-minded like you, that they see some of these problems. But it's like an uphill battle. You know, you're fighting this culture that doesn't want to do anything, you know, or change.
Yes, you are fighting the culture of no change. You are fighting the culture that does not particularly care for the newcomers.
Right. Well, at least you're not from Northern Virginia. I mean, that's. I mean, when you mentioned North Carolina, you're from a good area. You know?
And I'm actually a Virginia native.
There you go. So,
I was raised in Virginia.
When you mentioned it, I just say it because, you know, people say, oh, these people move out here from Northern Virginia and they bring all their politics and all their things that they want. They come out here and they love our small town charm that we have, but they want to change it. You know, they want to put a sidewalk on Skyline Drive or something. But you know, you're right. I mean, there is a culture. If you didn't graduate from high school, you're not considered. I don't care how long you've lived here. You got to graduate from the local high school in order to be considered a local. So don't feel alone.
I know. But I do have roots here. My first husband, was born here, and his family was from here. So I do have roots.
You have, and that makes a lot. It makes a difference. So what are some of the other things you want to try to accomplish in these first 4 years?
The other thing, too, is I think we need to work with the developer in Lake Frederick to have another access route out of there.
Yeah, one road
in and one road out.
Yeah.
What if we have a major catastrophe? What if something happens?
Right.
It would be terrible to try to get out. There are 2 entrances in the back, but they have double gates that are locked. So how do you...
I've heard about that. We have that problem here at Shenandoah Shores. You know, it's got a railroad and then one road in. So when you come out, if the train's blocking you, which has happened quite often, you know, you're fighting that. So that's a problem.
It is.
It's a problem.
It is, for the safety of the community.
Yeah. And years ago when these developments were planned, no one ever dreamed you'd have 2,000 homes there at all. Right. I can remember when there was almost no homes up there. And yeah, you're right. It's like all of a sudden, hey, this is a good thing. We want more, and takes off.
Well, it is a good thing because it adds to the economy, but we still want to preserve what Frederick County is, the rural nature of it, and we do have plenty of land to do that. Mm-hmm. But we've got to do it correctly.
Right. Where's the Opequon District kind of cover? Back behind, we know Lake Frederick, but
covers Lake Frederick. It covers all the way back to the backside of Stevens City.
Okay.
And then it covers down to Reliance Road.
Okay.
So it's a fairly large.
It's rural. That's a rural area.
It has a huge rural area to it.
Right.
And there are about 12,000 voters in the area.
Okay.
So it's a good size area.
Yeah. Well, I think your work is cut out for you. It's always, I appreciate anyone that runs for a political office, and it is very rewarding, even though it's a lot of work. a lot of work. But it takes somebody retired really to do these jobs. One, they have the experience, and two, they have the time.
Yes.
And I think that and I know Robin is a pharmacist, still are, I guess. I mean, we don't say you were because, that knowledge doesn't go away. And I tell you, anyone that can pass organic chemistry is pretty smart. So
Thank you.
I tell you on that, I tell people that's the course that weeds them out, right? But it's true. It takes a little, vision. There's a lot of numbers. You've been responsible for a lot of financial things, and I think that's important because budget is probably the one thing that the supervisors really are. That's what they have control over is the budget, and all these things you talked about all revolves around money.
Yes, I at one point was vice president of a chain of pharmacies where I had to manage a multi-million-dollar budget.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of education to be able to do that.
Yeah, right. And I think people think that a lot of times candidates are just one issue candidates, and they're very passionate about it, but they really don't have the scope of the things that have been going, to manage it. And I think that's good. I'm glad you stepped up because, that's hard. I mean, and get people to run is very difficult nowadays because they're people with any sense figure out the frustration level, but especially if they're working still. And but I do appreciate you having this commitment to do this. I think it's very important.
Well, thank you.
For our community, and I wish we had more to do that. Anything else you want to touch base on?
I do want to mention that I do support small business. I think with the growing area, we certainly would have the population to develop small and support small business along the Fairfax Pike corridor. I think most of my neighbors are supporters of this.
Right.
We would rather shop local than go back into Northern Virginia or even come to Front Royal or go to Winchester.
We love you. Hey, we give you a Front Royal address. What more do you want, right? We want you to come into Front Royal. And, you're close to our corridor area. So
and we love you down here, but...
But, I see that right outside of Lake Frederick, they have some land kind of set aside for some sort of commercial time there. So, but again, it takes housetops and it takes... some vision for somebody to see the market there, and it'll come. It
will come with time.
Yeah.
And that's what, going back to having lived in Charlotte, when their 55 and up communities started developing in South Charlotte, it took probably 10 years, but finally there were physicians' offices, there were grocery stores, there were small boutique shops that we could frequent, which was nice.
I had an aunt and uncle that lived just across the border, Indian Springs or something it was called, and there is a lot of Del Webb over 55 acres. It wasn't just one.
That's the area I was referring to.
Okay, and you're right. It has got everything there now, and it's just like it's a home community in its own town. It's got every facility you can think of right there. It's great. And nice thing about 55 and older communities, we don't have to worry about the schools. They're not a burden, very large on schools, and they're good. They help you develop better health care because they have a use for it, and they demand it, and they get it. And so there's a lot of pluses. They've been talking here, trying to get a couple of those things going, but I think it's it's one more blend that can come into your community, and I think we need more of those. We can drag them out of Northern Virginia out here, and bring their money and come on. But we don't want to build schools for you. That's the thing. So, anything else? You brought a list there. So, what else you got on there? Anything?
Well, and you mentioned schools are not important to a 55 and up community, but they are.
They're important, but they have to send their kids there.
But we're not sending our kids, so we're not putting a burden.
Right.
But a lot of us have moved here for our kids and our grandkids.
Yeah, that's it. I know. As we get older, our grandkids are very important, and normally you move here because they're here.
Right.
And so we want something really good for them. But you're right.
I have another daughter whose husband's in service, getting ready to get out in the next few years. He will have his time in, and they want to move to a smaller town and open a small business.
Yeah.
And Winchester would be, or Front Royal would be, a wonderful place.
And I'm sure you will encourage them that.
I have been encouraging them. It would be a wonderful place to start a small business.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Robin, I really appreciate you coming in, and hopefully people will know a little bit more about you. Mm-hmm. And we're going to put the information on Robin's website and check it out. If you live in that Opequon District, we have a lot of viewers from Lake Frederick that read the Royal Examiner, and hopefully this will make them a little more informed about the election coming up.
I hope it does.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robin. Appreciate it.
Thank you.